Shalom and welcome to Yeshiva B'nai Noach. I'm Tom Averna. Today, we'll start our series on the First Hebrew Primer by Ethelyn Simon, Linda Motzkin, Irene Resnikoff, authors. Since I'm not charging for this instruction, your only cost will be the purchase of this book as your textbook. Please do not continue this course without purchasing the textbook. It's available at many online booksellers. I'll include the Amazon link in the description section. And no, I don't get any commission from Amazon. It's just the most convenient way to purchase, but it may not be the cheapest. I've chosen this book because I found it the easiest of all the college level textbooks for non-college students to use. Another reason I would recommend purchasing the book is that my focus here will be on reading and not writing the language. So I'll be skipping over the writing portion of the exercises, but I'd still recommend that you do those exercises if you truly want to perfect your Hebrew language skills. So as we begin the series, expect a new lesson every week. If I have handouts, I'll link to them in my Google Docs pages. I'll normally divide each lesson into two sections, the chapter review, and then the exercises will follow the next week. The first three chapters I'll do both at once, but you can study at whatever pace you need to by stopping and starting the video. So let's begin with an overview of the book. The first three chapters are really review. If you don't already know how to read letters, I would recommend using the companion book by some of the same authors entitled Teach Yourself to Read Hebrew. This is also available on Amazon, and you can also take that course here as well. And chapters 4 through 7 will begin our journey by looking at basic grammar involving nouns and verbs. The focus will be on the perfect tense verbs only, which primarily means past tense. Chapters 8 through 10 will focus again on nouns, looking at how to define them, definite, as well as the form and usage of word pairs, also called construct nouns. As there are 30 chapters, we end the first course here and we'll continue in the second course with chapters 11 through 20. So we'll talk more about that then. Each chapter is structured essentially the same way after we begin with chapter 4. The structure is essentially an oral review to begin with. It's a review of vocab and grammar from previous chapters through translation exercises. It's again a very good way to review all the things that you've learned up to that point. So, again, I do like the structure of this book. The next thing you'll find is the vocabulary list. It introduces new vocabulary words along with notes, and usually about 14 new words per chapter, both nouns and verbs. The next section will be their grammar points. It introduces about 4 to 6 grammar points per chapter. The difficulty increases as we go. And then we have the exercises section. There's about 8 exercises per chapter, with about half of them being written exercises, which again, we will be skipping those as we put this class together. And then beginning in chapter 8, one of the unique features of this book that I really like, and it's called Tall Tales. And these are wonderful translation exercises using fairy tales and myths. And again, just a fun way to begin to hone your translation skills with just using the vocab and grammar that you've had up to that point. And of course, each of these tall tales will get a little more difficult as we go. And then beginning with chapter 10, we actually begin some biblical translations, a very simplified form, again, using the vocab that you already know and the grammar, but we begin to translate the book of Ruth, and that starts in chapter 10. So we'll just start that at the end of this particular class. Let's begin then with chapter 1. We're on page 3 if you are in your book. And what we can see here are the first 6 letters and the first 2 vowels. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're not really going to be covering this. We're going to make an assumption that you already know how to read the letters and the vowels. If not, then I do refer you to the Teach Yourself to Read Hebrew course that you can get also here on this YouTube channel of Yeshiva B'nai Noach. But we'll just briefly go over The letters, of course, Aleph is the silent letter, the first letter of the alphabet. We have the first Bagad Kafat letter, the Bet with the dagesh or dot, and the Vet without the dot. Gimel, Dalet, Hey, and Vav. So it says here Aleph is the silent letter. You can pronounce the vowel after the Aleph, but not the Aleph itself. And as I've talked about before in the first class, these silent letters, there's two of them, Aleph and Ayin. And Aleph, there's no one that I know of that actually pronounces this letter, but at one time, the biblical in biblical Hebrew, there was a sound for it. We just aren't sure or know what that sound was. But at this point in modern Hebrew, the Aleph is silent. And then, of course, Bet and Vet, as I mentioned, you have the first set of what are called the Bagad Kafat letters. I'll explain that, or the book will explain that a little further on. But essentially, the dot in the letter, which is called a dagesh, is a breath stopper, so that when you begin to say the letter, your breath stops. So b, b, b. And there's no breath that goes through that. Without the dot, without the stopper, then your breath blows through it. So it goes V, V, V. So we pronounce it as a V, as in vine, in modern Hebrew. Technically, it's not. A V, if you make the sound of a V, you'll notice that it is in your mouth is in a different place than when you begin the sound of B, B. And generally, as I said, the dot is a stopper. When you take the stopper out, it's the same letter. You're just putting air through it. So it's V, V, V. Don't worry about that. Just to give you background, I like to do that. And as we look at biblical pronunciations as well, we do stick with the modern Hebrew, and all you're expected to learn is the modern Hebrew pronunciation. So again, in modern Hebrew, that would be a B for Bet and a V for Vet. The letter B, Vet, and Vav are both pronounced as a V as in vine. And then we have, again, to let you know, the V, the vine, V as in vine for the Vet. In biblical Hebrew and ancient pronunciation, this would be more like a W sound than a V. But again, modern Hebrew has dropped that, and we just pronounce this as a V as in vine. And we'll deal with that a little bit more when we get into the letter itself, down a little later on. So when hey comes at the end of a word, it's and is not followed by a vowel, it is silent, pretty much like English. When you have an H at the letter of a word, it's generally silent, so there's nothing new there. Hebrew letters sometimes have dots in the middle, as we talked about here, but there are only a few cases in which the dot changes a letter's pronunciation. It's actually 3 cases that it changes in the 6 Bagad Kafat letters. And this is the first one we've learned here is the Bet. The other Bagad Kafat letter, actually we have 2 more in this series. We have the Gimel and the Dalet. That stays the same. There's no difference with or without the dot. So that's where the name comes from. B, G, D, Bagad. And then the final 3 we'll get to as we look at the next set of letters. So we have the first 2 vowels that we'll pick up here. And the vowels are dots and dashes, essentially, underneath the letters, occasionally above the letter. But generally speaking, underneath the letter is where you would find your vowels in Hebrew. This was something that was added later. The Torah scrolls don't have vowels in them. They just have the consonants, which is normally the way you would read Hebrew. If you're in Israel reading a book or reading the newspaper, you're going to read Hebrew without the vowels. But for beginners, it's important to first learn how to pronounce the words. And once you pick up your vocabulary, then you can do away with the vowels because you'll recognize the words themselves. We'll talk about why Hebrew is very unique in this way that enables you to do that. But at any rate, the first two sets of vowels that we're going to learn, and you're not required to remember the names of the vowels, but they do help you with the pronunciation if you do. So you have the kamats, kamats, and the patak, patak. And both of these in modern Hebrew are pronounced A as in ya, at, at. There's no a in Hebrew. There's only an a sound. So you know that they're going to be pronounced exactly the same. Now, again, biblical Hebrew was different. Ashkenazic Hebrew in modern times pronounces this more, I think, as an aw sound. But we'll again be learning Sephardic pronunciations for the most part in this class, and they both treat this as the exact same sound, ah, as in yacht. So the note here, when a vowel is written below a consonant, you pronounce the consonant first and then the vowel. When a vowel appears below an aleph, you pronounce the vowel only. So their example, and again, Hebrew is always read from right to left, from right to left. So you begin with the consonant b, you add the vowel a, and you get ba. You begin with the consonant aleph, which is silent. You add the vowel a, and you get the sound ah. Another production note, if you will. I do try and put the page numbers up here of what page I am dealing with, because I don't always go in the order that the book has, but you can always refer up here and see what page number that I am dealing with in this particular section. Sometimes I will add things to the presentation that aren't in the book, but I'll try and make sure I let you know when that happens. So the next thing we'll look at are which of the letters are considered look-alike letters. And these can sometimes be stumbling blocks, especially when you're trying to read smaller print. But we have the three, what they call the look-alike letters here that we've had so far. We have the Vav, the Zayin, and the Yod. Again, you can see they're very similar, although there's distinctive differences that shouldn't make it too hard. The Vav is the line comes perpendicular to the top line on the right side, whereas the Zayin, the top line is somewhat angled, and then from the middle of that line comes the downward stroke. And then the yod is the smallest letter. There's a lot to talk about in terms of that, but it is a very powerful letter, the first letter in the Tetragrammaton, the name of God, the Yod He Vav He. But this is the yod. So again, the tops kind of look the same, so you might be confused. But the yod, I don't know that you'd ever really be confused with the yod, because it doesn't go down. As long as it's written correctly, you won't see anything that will make you think of these two letters. The next that they show you is the bet and the kaf, or the vet and the chaf, as look-alike letters. And again, you can see there is a similarity. The bet has a base, very solid base, whereas the chaf does not. It's just a very short base and then curving up and matching the top. And then with the dagesh, with the dot, they're going to look, again, it's very similar. The other two letters they're showing you here, the hey and the chet, and the biggest difference is the hey has a hole. The hey has a hole in it, whereas the chet is closed. Okay? One of the features of this book is that in order to help you know the pronunciation, and the beautiful thing about Hebrew is once you learn what each of the consonants sound like, what each of the vowels sound like, there aren't going to be, for the most part, exceptions to that. So it's real easy to learn to read Hebrew. It's not that easy to learn to translate or understand the words, but reading is pretty simple because, again, your consonants and vowels are always going to sound the same. So you see this on page 5, you have the checkup word. So again, if you want to pronounce this, it's bog, bog, and the closest English word that they give you to that is the word bog, and slightly different depending on how you pronounce it. But this would be bog, bog, or bog, if in the English. Odd. And when we translate, there are exercises where you write an English word with Hebrew letters. The thing to remember is we're not writing the word letter for letter. We're writing the word the way it sounds. So we're writing the sounds. So as you can see here, odd, spelled in English with an O, but here the O is actually an ah sound, which is what makes English so hard, but makes Hebrew so simple. It's always going to be odd, the pronunciation. Bob, we have ha ha, ha ha. We have Bach. It's kind of a tough one to pronounce, the chet, but it's a Germanic sound, and you get the name Bach using that letter. Heat, again, not spelling it the same way it's spelled in English, but we're spelling the sound. So heat, heat, key, ata, eat, yacht, easy, easy. And as I mentioned, I do go slightly out of order here in some cases. Again, I'm assuming you already have a familiarity with the letters and the vowels. So as we just did the exercises previous to this, we used letters that we hadn't actually looked at yet, but we'll get through this now. So we have the next set of letters here, the next 5 letters and a new vowel. We have the Zion, Z as in zebra. And they show you here 2 other things. So this is the block letters, the printed letters, I should say. And then you have how you might write those in block form. And then there's also the the kind of the script form, if you will, in Hebrew for each of the letters. There's a different form for that letter if you're writing script. And generally speaking, if you are taking modern Hebrew, if you're writing a letter to someone, if you're writing informal notes, you would most likely use this form. We're not going to teach this. We're not going to learn this form. The book does provide you with it if you want to go over it and learn it on your own. That certainly wouldn't be a bad thing to do. But primarily in writing, we'll be writing this form here. Again, we don't do the writing in the class, but as you begin to do your own practice with writing, you'll use this block form here as you're writing. I mean, you could do either one; doesn't really matter. But that's this is the one that most likely you'll use. I do find this easier than the script for some reason, but again, like handwriting, cursive is supposedly easier to write than printing. It's faster at any rate. So same concept here. So we have the Zion, the Z is in zebra. We have the chet, the ch as in Bach. We have the tet, the T as in tail. We have the yod, which is the Y as in yes. We have the kaf. So now we have remember we had the bagad, BGD, in the first lesson. Now we're first section. And now we'll pick up another of the bagad kafat letters. This is the kaf, kaf. So with the dot, it's a K. Without the dot, it's a che, che. Again, as I said, if you make the sound of the K, you're going to stop the breath. But if you let the breath blow through it, it would be ka, ka, ka. It ends up being the guttural. So that's how you get the difference in the sound. One is with breath, one is without breath. The letter becomes what's called the hard letter. The vowel we're picking up here is the chirek, the chirek and the chirek yad. E, both of these make the E sound. Okay? E and E. This is in modern Hebrew. And even in modern Hebrew, you will sometimes see this pronounced I, as in big. So because this is the short vowel, this would be the long vowel in this class. So I or E, this book would just have you pronounce them both the same way, E and E. So the kaf and the chaf are the same letter, although the kaf is pronounced K as in kitty, and the chaf is pronounced CH as in Bach. The letters chet and chaf are both pronounced with the rasping H sound, as in the word Bach. And then the new vowel can be written in two ways, either a single dot under the consonant or with a single dot under the consonant followed by a yud. Now, when a letter follows a vowel and doesn't have a vowel underneath it, generally, and we'll see more examples of this, that letter will be part of the vowel. So this is again E and E, or I and E in terms of the pronunciation. The vowel just stretches it out, and that's what makes it a long vowel. I mean, the consonant stretches it out. That's what makes it a long vowel as we put it together. Another way to remember the sound of this is to think of it as a little bee buzzing under the letter E, a bee buzzing under the letter. So E sound. And here are opportunities for you to practice the sounds. We're going to skip this as far as going over it here in class. But again, page 5, good exercise just to take the time if you want or if you need to pronounce the letters and get practice doing that. Same thing with exercise 2 on page 6. We'll skip this, but a good practice with your letters and consonants and vowels, putting them together. If you want to take the time, and I do recommend that you do that, go ahead and go through this. Again, I'm assuming this is very basic and very simple for those of you taking the course who've already had familiarity with the Hebrew letters. If not, again, I recommend teach yourself to read Hebrew to learn that way. So we are in the exercise section of the book. And as I pointed out, we've skipped a few exercises already. I'll show you 2 of those at the end because they are important ones that I would recommend that you do. We're just not going to do them in class. So let's start with exercise 4. This is on page 6 of your book. And we're just going to read the letters and vowels aloud. So the way I think I would like to do this, I did this in Teach Yourself to Read Hebrew, is we'll do it one line at a time. I'll have you, and you can do this any way you want to, since we're going to stop and start the video. But I would like you to try first of all just to read across, and then so stop the video to do that, and then I'll read the line across, and then you can practice it one more time. Again, it's up to you how much time you spend with these exercises. Okay, so go ahead and stop the video now. And let's read across on line 1. So we have av, ad, ag, az, bat, bach. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Vach. That's a V sound. Vach. Ba. va, va, va. Okay, line 2, stop the video. Line 2, heat, heave, heave, heed, yich or yich, ye, be, key, be, ka, bika. Okay, line 3, stop the video. Okay, let's read across. At, baz, viz, eat, gav, dag, tea, he, da, yag, da, yag. Okay, line 4, stop the video. Okay, let's read across. Kach, bi, vav, kiv, got, heed, yad, zacha, gida. One of the things we haven't talked about, just as you notice as we're doing here, as you begin, generally in Hebrew, as you probably already know, we'll point out again, the accent is generally on the last syllable. So zacha. So this word would be zacha. These aren't real words, but zacha. So your emphasis is on the last syllable. As we begin in the reading process, though, I just recommend that you take each syllable at a time and read it that way. So za, cha. So take your time, syllable by syllable, and pronounce it. In Hebrew, a syllable is a consonant and a vowel. That's called an open syllable. Or it's a consonant and a vowel followed by another consonant. That would be called a closed syllable, right? And especially if this appears in the middle of a word and the second letter were pronounced, you would pronounce them together as one part of the syllable. There are tricks and ways, grammatical reasons why a syllable might be open or closed and how to tell, but we'll deal with that a little bit later on. Okay, so let's go to line 5, stop the video, practice. Okay, let's read across. Hag, chag, ziv, tav, ki, yach, div, gad, ka, cha. All right, line 6, stop the video. Line 6, let's read across. Zach, ta, yid, kav, kiv, bag, da, vid, chi, da, chi, da. Line 7, stop the video. Okay, let's read line 7 across. God, kav, ba, bi, av, hav, bag, beat, chata. All right, let's go on. As I said, once we get past chapter 3 into chapter 4, we will divide these lessons up into two parts. One part with the beginning of the chapter, and the second part with the exercises. But the first 3 chapters are fairly short and mostly reviews, so we aren't going to do that here. We'll just keep going. Page 7, we're on exercise 7, and these are real Hebrew words that we're reading, but I still want us to start out. If you can do this faster, please feel free to. I would just recommend, as you're beginning to get into it again, that you take it a syllable at a time. We might do this a couple of ways, but at any rate, let's continue on the way we did before. So go ahead and stop the video, practice these on your own. Let's read line 1. Avi, avi. Az, az. Ach, ach. Achad, achad. Av, av. Ahav, ahav. Aviv, aviv. So as we mentioned before, we have an open syllable here, and then we have a closed syllable with a consonant, a vowel. Even though this is a consonant, in this case it's acting only as a vowel. So you still have one consonant, followed by a vowel, followed by the closing consonant. So again, aviv. And the last one on this line, avad, avad. Line 2, stop the video. Okay, let's read across line 2. Ava, ava. Av, av. Akkad, akkad. Achaz, achaz. Ba, ba. Ba, ba. Ba, tach, batach. Biza, biza. Line 3, stop the video. Okay, let's read across. Buzz, bazad, bazad. Bad, bada, bada. Badad, badad. Badad, badad. Ba hot, bahat. Be ah, bia. Line 4, stop the video. Let's read across. Ba za, baza. Ba zaz, bazaz. Be ga ah, ga ah. Ga av, gaav. Gav, ga va, gava. Ga dad, gadad. Okay, stop the video. Practice 5. Let's read number 5, line 5 across. God, gadi, gada, gaha, gaza, giza, ha, God, gazaz. Couple of things to point out on this line. Of course, you have the Bagad Kafat letter with a dagesh, but in this case, that dagesh does not change the pronunciation of the letter. The only 3 letters that are changed are the bet, which becomes a V, a vet, the kaf, which becomes a chaf without the dot, without the dagesh, okay, and the pei, which becomes a fe without the dagesh. And again, I guess we haven't quite picked that one up yet, but we'll look at that in the next grouping. But at any rate, so the other thing to point out here is you'll notice a dot, a dagesh in the zayin, and we haven't talked about this yet either, but you may remember this if you took the Teach Yourself to Read Hebrew class. When there is a dagesh or dot in a letter that isn't the Bagad Kafat letter, and sometimes when it is, but generally speaking, if it isn't a Bagad Kafat letter, what that dagesh is doing is it's essentially strengthening that letter, it's doubling it. So in the pronunciation here, you would actually have 2 Z's. You have giz, so this would actually be a closed syllable because it has the G, the I, and the Z, giz. And then the second syllable has another Z, pronouncing it za. So giz, za. Generally speaking, when we're especially in modern Hebrew, you're probably not going to hear that doubling sound, but it is there. And of course, professional speakers, you might be able to hear that. Someone who knows what they're doing in terms of the pronunciations. But for the most part, most of us are pretty lazy in terms of speaking, and so we kind of gloss over that and say Giza, as opposed to Giza. But just to point that out to you, we'll talk about that a few more times, I'm sure. All right, so that was line 5. Let's stop the video, practice line 6. Let's continue on with line 6. Gid, da, ag, da, a, da, vav, di, ba, da, ga, dai, yag, dayak, di, da, di, da. Line 7. Stop the video. Let's read line 7 across. David, David. David, David. Dava, dacha, dacha. Hagig, hagig. Haga, haga. Hada, hada. And he. Line 8, stop the video. Let's read line 8 across. Ha, va. Ha, va. Ka, av. Ha, av. Ha, ya. Ha, he. Ha, ach. And have. To point this out to you, as we mentioned before, again, this is not a Begad Kafat letter, this Vav. So that it has a dagesh in it means that, and I probably pronounced it just straight across, just to give you the syllables, but technically, this would be, the first syllable would be hav, and the second syllable would be va. So hav, va, hava. Again, you're not going to always hear that doubling, but it is there. It is part of it. Stop the video and practice line 9. Let's read line 9 across. Ha-vi, avi. Haz-zav, hazav. Za-vad, zavad. Za-vach, zavach. Zibach, zibach. Zav, zahav. Haz, zahav, hazahav. Line 10, stop the video and practice. Let's read line 10 across. Ha, chi, ba, hachiba. Ya, dav, yadav. Zag, za, zaza. Ziv, ziz. Ziza, ziza. Za-ka, zaka. Practice line 11 now. Stop the video. Let's read line 11 across. Cha, va, chava. Cha, vat, chavat. Chag, chagi. Chagi. Chag, ga, chaga. Chagav, chagav. Chagag, chagag. Chada, chada. Line 12, stop the video. Let's practice line 12. Cha, dad, chadad. Cha, did, chadid. Cha, da, chada. Chiv, va, chiva. Cha, za, chaza. Chach, kind of a tough one. Chach, cha, ta. Chi, actually that would be chit, ta, chita. Okay. Line 13, stop the video and practice. Let's read line 13 across. Cha, ya, chaya. Chi, da, chida. Chaya, chaya. Tav, tabach. Tach, tit, ya'av. All right, practice 14. Stop the video. Let's read line 14 across. Ya'a, yi'a, yad, hayad, yadi, yada, yidach, yachad. 15. Stop the video. Let's read it across. Kavad, ka'av, ka'va, kad, ki-ha, kazav, ki, kacha. Okay. Two of the exercises that we skipped, just to kind of go over them with you. Exercise 5, using either block or script style, write each of the letters you've learned 10 times. Again, very important, very good exercise to do if you're learning the letters for the first time. But as I said, we're not going to cover the writing here. And then exercise 6, this is an exercise you'll see several times as we continue on. This one I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do spend the time and do. And what they've done here is they've given you English words and asked you to spell them with Hebrew letters. Again, as we mentioned, you're not spelling the word letter for letter. You're spelling the sound. So heave would be 2 consonants and 1 vowel if you're writing it out in the Hebrew. Again, the E silent here. This is the EA is pronounced E. So you just have the H and the V. Heave. Okay, the Hey and the Vav, or the Hey and the Vet. And that's the other thing. When you're doing these exercises, it doesn't matter which letter you use for the sound. I mean, if there's 2 letters that make the V sound, you can use either one, doesn't matter. The main practice here is just getting practice recognizing those sounds. As you learn all of the letters and vowels, and again, I'm assuming that you already do, this is the kind of exercise you can take any English text that you want and begin writing it in Hebrew, just to get that practice of seeing, writing the Hebrew and hearing the sounds using words that are familiar to you, so you know that you're pronouncing it correctly, that you're doing it right. So, as I said, highly recommend exercise 6 and this, you'll see this exercise, similar ones, a lot. in this book. Another thing I like about the book. That's going to conclude the first chapter, chapter 1 of the First Hebrew Primer, as we begin this course on Yeshiva B'nai Noach, and I invite you to continue with us for the next 10 chapters that we'll be doing in this first section of classes to get you through the First Hebrew Primer. As I mentioned, the next two classes, chapter 2 and chapter 3, we'll do the entire chapters, including the exercises. And then beginning with chapter 4, we'll break it up. About once a week, look back here for the next chapter as we continue on in the First Hebrew Primer. Thanks for sharing your time with me. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Tom Averna on Yeshiva B'nai Noach. Shalom.